Here we go. Northeast Germany. Okay, everybody, in my normal quiet voice, we're going to get ready to start. And I promise I won't be using a loud voice after this. So first off, I want to thank everyone for coming here today. We are here to memorialize. We're memorializing Greg. And if you've seen the obituary, which was very well put together, by the way, the obituary covers a number of aspects of Greg's life. And one of the things, though, that the obituary couldn't necessarily do so much of was memorialize what we do here. The little the interactions that we might do, the gatherings, some of the litigation issues, obviously without divulging any confidence. But anyway, the point is information that happens here is unique. And today what we'd like to do is share some of that. First off, and I would be remiss if I didn't, our deepest condolences to Monica and the family. It just isn't right to have a death at age 64. But, Greg was a great believer in God and God's acts, and somehow, some way, this was viewed as important. And I can't say anything more to it than that. I know here at the firm, we have and will continue to miss Greg. A lot of what we do here with Greg is there's a friendship component, but there's also a professional component to it. And he will be very hard to replace. But we do have to move on. We do move on. And what we're going to do here today, my hope, is that we talk about recollections, memories, little anecdotes, whatever it might be. And at the end of the day, what I would love to have happen is that there's a smile on our heart and in our mind. It might not be on our face, but there'll be a smile based on what Greg did. And I thought I was going to get through this. I haven't even gotten through my introduction yet. So a couple of things that I'm going to do, one of which is we've got some recollections of sorts. And I would be remiss if I didn't start off with a comment from Greg's mentor, Dick Evans. And when Kate sent a note to him, he came back with, I'll just read it. Here's a remembrance of an adventure that Greg had long ago, early on in his career with WH&E. I got a call from Judge Hogan of the district court. Bruce, Dave, Kurt, we all know, maybe Glenn, all know about Judge Hogan, saying that an impecunious individual had filed a copyright infringement case based on alleged copying of some music he had written. The judge knew that he, the author, the plaintiff, needed help and asked me to get someone to handle it pro bono. Although the plaintiff firmly believed he had a case, it was a clear loser. Nonetheless, the judge wanted it heard in court. I appointed Greg, then new at the office, to handle it. The music in question was not exactly of Beethoven's fifth originality. After hearing it, I could see absolutely no similarity to the plaintiff's music. Neither, I suspect, could the judge. Nevertheless, Greg plunged into the matter and took on the challenge earnestly. He handled it in a good, lawyerly way. He was entitled to look back on it with a sense of accomplishment for stepping up and giving it his all. The judge was, I am sure, quite grateful to be rid of the matter gracefully. But that is but one example of what we know Greg has done. Over the years, I can truthfully tell you that never, if I came to him with a question, did he ever say, I can't talk to you? Not once. He may have had a trial the next day. He may have had a brief to be filed. And he would say, I got this to be filed by such and such. Can I talk to you afterwards? That's just how Greg did it. He did not ever find that his dealings with his partners somehow insulated him from having to respond to them. He was absolutely a team player. Absolutely. And I don't really have it necessarily so well connected in here, but I'm going to go with another set of recollections regarding Greg. And this, courtesy of the Greyhounds Rugby Club. The notice got out to them about the obituary, and these are responses. Again, I'm just reading from them, folks. These are responses that came back. Greg was a great person and a club man. He did a lot for the CRFC, the Greyhounds, beyond his playing days. Was one of the best people I have ever known. A genuine nice guy. Greg did a lot of work for the club behind the scenes that many didn't know. Such a good soul. A great club man and a friend to all. Great guy. Always willing to lend guidance and help me with foundation issues. Greg was the ultimate club man. He did what he could to help the club, switching positions when he played, gave us a lot of time when we created pitch holdings. Rugby people help me out, I don't know. And the foundation. And by all accounts, was a tremendous asset while on the foundation board, all while being a wonderful person. He was always a welcoming person. He was a great teammate, tough as hell, and willing to play anywhere on the pitch. He also was a great lawyer and a great father. Greg was a kind and gentle man that no rugby stereotype would fit. I once remember him showing up with his mouth wired shut from a broken jaw that he received in the previous match. We all gave him a bit of a cheer, and then the rugby stereotype and the rest of us kicked in, and we all started yelling for him to give a speech. As in, speech, speech, speech. Greg was so pleasant, he didn't realize all of us idiots were yanking his chain, and he proceeded to try and tell us how it had happened. We didn't understand a word he said, as he tried to maneuver his lips around, and we could only feel a bit shameful afterward. Greg was a good, but not great, rugby player. He could handle himself at positions 10 to 15, was a very good kicker. So how does a guy like this become a Hall of Famer? He was, you saw with the obituary, he is on the Hall of Fame of the Greyhounds. He combined his solid rugby skills with a lifetime of dedicated service to the club. Now, going back to the wired shut, there is actually a connection to Woodhairn and Evans. So Greg is in a match and he breaks his jaw. And he's got to get his jaw wired. The following Monday, 2 days later, 1 day later, Clem Lucan and Greg Ahrens are going up to Washington, D.C. to do some searching. Greg didn't take it. He didn't say, I can't do it. I didn't, I'm sick, I'm injured. He showed up. He gets up there. You can barely understand what he's saying, but he's up there. And as many of us who searched up in Crystal City remember, the way the flights went, you actually could get to the patent office by 8 a.m. Literally, the doors open, we're standing there ready to go. And we searched from 8 a.m. to about 6 p.m. Take a lunch break, but it's a long day. The only cool part of it was we could go to a really nice restaurant. Nobody gave us grief about it. So here we are on Monday, and Greg's got his mouth's all wired shut. Well, Greg, what do you want to do? What do we know it? I said, okay, fine. Well, we picked out what we thought he wanted to do. We went to the restaurant and he ordered somehow. He told them, my jaw's wired shut. They went back in the back and they put his dinner in a blender and they brought his blended dinner out in a big old glass with a big old straw. And that's how Greg did his first dinner in Washington, D.C. The guy just never gave up. He just never did. It was not in Greg's vocabulary to say, I can't do it. And so there he was doing it yet again. So I've started off my introductory pieces, and I don't want to take over the floor because there's a lot of you here, and several of you have no doubt can give a few of your own stories and anecdotes. I'll open the floor to anyone who needs to or would like to speak. Anybody? Dave? The only requirement here today is that you keep this microphone nearby because Monica is recording through Tom. It's going to record the audio. And so you don't have to clip it, just hold it, and that way we'll pick up your.
Okay, great. I've known Greg since 1987, and that's quite a few years. What I want to tell you, as you may know, Greg is different. And I'm going to, excuse me, talk about that in a minute. But to tell you that I've always been fascinated by the outside interests of the lawyers and the staff at Wood, Herron, and Evans. They've really run the gamut. It's just been incredible to kind of follow up. We've had someone who's walked the Appalachian Trail. We've had expert fishermen, expert hunters. We've had a guy who was a guide, fishing guide in Alaska. We've had scout leaders and overnighters and whatnot. We've got golfers and football players and rugby players. It's always been just incredible. And as Clem was mentioning the jaw situation, we never knew that Greg Ahrens played much semi-pro rugby until the first day he walked in after he was able to with his jaw wired shut. And he told somebody or wrote it out what had happened. And so we all had understood this, but that was a rough game. So that was just another one of the outside interests, which had been very fascinating if you look over the outside interest of all of the Wood, Herron, and Evans people and folks. The other recollection that I have of Greg, another one, is that if you were to walk around our office, particularly over in the Carew Tower, and maybe here, I'm not so sure about, you could walk into Greg's office and there was not one fiber of carpet or paper that was anywhere but where it was supposed to be. And if you know anything about the chaos of litigation and how it can fill up your mind so that your mind is really just of a normal person, not your own, I always marveled at how Greg could keep all of this stuff in an orderly fashion in his mind and see all this paperwork that is inevitably accompanying a litigation like that and everything in its place. I don't know how he did it. He must have had some sort of a mental filing capacity that helped him do that. He also had somebody to help him do that called Terry. And Terry, I don't know how much of that was Greg and how much of that was you, but I know you helped. So congratulations. Yeah. So let me get back to my.
There you go.
Something fell.
Put this on.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So I've forgotten exactly the detail. I was involved in the hiring at the time of a lot of our associates, and somehow I got in contact with Greg, or he got in contact with us, and his CV and his accomplishments at Texas and Wisconsin and other places were important and significant. And we were looking for a very good person who I thought would be happy in Cincinnati. And it turned out to be Greg. And so we met Greg and went through that process and extended an offer. And Greg came to work with us. So Greg was not married at the time. He had no family here and he had no place to go. And we lived in Kentucky and we had a house that was big enough, even though we still had 3 high schoolers in our house with us. But Greg moved into our house and he stayed there for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 4 weeks or 5 weeks. I've just forgotten, while he looked for a place to land of his own. And so we had a personal relationship with Greg for a number of weeks, not just working here for me, but my whole family, as he lived with us for that several weeks' time. And during that time, and this gets back to just my comment, Greg was different. During that time, I had the opportunity to go out with Greg and introduce him to places in the community that were important to him. So we had to go to the real estate agent and work with her on where he might find a good spot to land. We had to go to the bank and talk with the bank tellers about getting a bank situation set up. We went to the pharmacy and he met the pharmacist and had a relationship there, and a number of other people. And during those several weeks of going through that, just getting acclimated to this area, it was unbelievably obvious to me that Greg was different, because all these people were interacting with him like they owed him something. They loved to be around Greg. Personality, way he looked or whatnot, it was just absolutely incredible. And I began to see that here was a person, excuse me, that people reacted to in a very positive way. And I think that was the way Greg was through his whole 39 years here. But it was obvious to me, and it was so obvious because I had not ever seen that before. I mean, you talk about people being nice and courteous, and that's just fine. This was different. There was some kind of magnetism, I think, around around Greg that we all benefited from as we knew him. So, Clem, those are my recollections.
Have anybody else with recollections? Start. Sarah.
So hopefully I can get through this. Nope, can't. Sorry. I started 25 years ago in September of 2001. Oh, sorry. My first interaction with Greg was, I started on September 10th. And, you know, you're young, you're a fresh associate, you don't know anything, and didn't have a desk yet, didn't have an office, so I was in the, you know, the bowels of the litigation room, and went around and introduced myself to people. But the first introduction I had with Greg was sadly through email when he sent us all home on September 11th. And he was a leader to me. I looked up to him, and the calm and just the direction that, you know, we needed. But as an associate, I sat there on September 11th not knowing if I should go, terrified for, you know, what the unknown was that we all felt. But when he sent that email around 2 o'clock that said, you know what, we don't need to be here, go home to your families, it really made a mark, because it to me highlighted the values that Greg had. And even though he was a hard worker, he absolutely loved this place. I mean, Tom and I tried to send him home a couple months ago, and he absolutely said, no way. I love this place. I want to come in every day. You know, I live for the Wood Heron and Evans, and he truly did. but he also recognized when it was important to walk away from Wood, Herron, and Evans to be with family and recognize, the bigger picture. He was a mentor, but ultimately became a very close friend. And he will be greatly missed. Again, for his calm, for his passion about this place, for his passion about the Sky Terrace. So anyway, last year was really hard. And Monica, Celia, you guys are amazing, and the strength that you had to support him, which we didn't even really see. You were, behind the scenes, but you made him capable of coming in every day and being the pillar of Wood, Herron, and Evans that we all knew he was for the last 40 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. This idea, I'm sorry, I'm trying to segue. If something catches my ear, I'll segue over. So we have the terrace, right? Well, the terrace involved having to deal with the building. And it's possible, I think when we were over at Carew Tower, things could be a little rocky when we were dealing with the building and, things weren't happening or whatever it might be. And Erica contacted, in preparation for this, these tables that we have here, these tables are from the building. And we said, can you possibly get us something that, will help us do exactly what we did, get everybody in this room. And I just threw out the parenthetical, shoot, tables are kind of, institutional looking. I said, is there any chance we might be able to get hold of some tablecloths or something? And the response came back from Gina at the building. And she, of course, had heard that this was for a memorial for Greg. And she came back and says, well, we've got some red tablecloths. And she said, if they'll be fine, you don't have to rent them. They're free. We liked working with Greg. So just just even minor, what we might think in the overall scheme of things, some kind of a gathering or some kind of an interaction, not unlike what Dave was saying with bank tellers when Greg first came to Cincinnati. They just like to deal with Greg. And that's how it worked out. So we have these courtesy of Greg. Our tablecloths are courtesy of Greg. And we talked about this whole idea about what Greg did at this firm. And by the way, I said this a couple of times around, we don't have rules here today, okay? The idea here is everyone decompress. We want you to be calm. We want you to be comfortable. If anybody wants to get some food, if you want to get some dessert, if you want to get something to drink, there is absolutely nobody going to stare at you and say, well, you're leaving in the middle of a speech. No, just do it, okay? Anybody and everybody. But another piece, kind of following up where Sarah was, keep in mind, to my knowledge, Greg was the longest serving person on our EC, our executive committee. He was on the executive committee more than anyone else. Greg also, before we had an executive committee, he was the partner in charge of the staff. So Greg always had a certain affiliation with the staff. And even when we, switched over to the EC, and Greg may have had some window when he was not on the EC, he would be on a committee that would be working with the staff in some way, shape, or form. It's just part of his being. And there was nothing else that drove him. He didn't have to do anything. He just did it. And on the matter of, how he felt about the firm, never did I ever heard of anything coming out of Greg's mouth like, oh, Wood, Heron, and Evans, we suck. Oh, we're this, we're that. Never, ever happened. He always figured that there was some way, shape, or form that wherever we were, maybe we had some disagreement in the partner meeting or something, it would be worked out and we would be better for it when we came out. So, Kate, I'll give this over to you. Oh, sorry, Bruce. Here you go. Yes, well, tenure wins.
Got tenure on you. Just to add a few things to what has already been said, as some of you know, I worked very closely with Greg for a number of years when he was becoming what he became, a super lawyer. And we had a number of interesting cases together, which we started calling the sandwich cases. And they were not your typical sandwich case. We named them because all the cases involved multiple layers of certain material. So we started out together with the grilled cheese sandwich case, which was, of all things, an incontinent pad that had 3 layers. So calling it a grilled cheese sandwich made it much more palatable than incontinent pad. We worked up from there. We went to grilled cheese plus tomato. That was part of a lawsuit involving underground storage tanks, which are not very good things to be talking about. And then we finally graduated to the 5-layer, which had the grilled cheese, it had the tomato, and it had bacon. And throughout the whole time, it was a team effort. Greg performed beyond belief, never said, I can't do that, or I'm not available. He always pitched in. And of course, Terry knows because through one of the cases, the 5-layer case, she sat through the whole, what was it, a month or more, split up. And Greg, as well as I did, took our licks from that federal judge, who was the worst federal judge I've ever been before. I mean, there wasn't a day that went by when he didn't get on either Greg or me, and then he would beat on the other lawyers. But finally, at the end, we won, and Greg played a major role in that. The other thing I'd like to mention and kind of add to is Greg was also an asset to Wood, Heron, and Evans in terms of the administrative side. Clem mentioned the fact of him being on the executive committee for years, and he just was a Wood, Heron, and Evans man. He worked hard for the firm. He always was available to talk to people about anything. And the last thing I'd like to mention is I don't think there's ever been a person at Wood, Heron, and Evans who spent at least half their vacation a couple years in a row rebuilding a church in New Orleans that had been destroyed by Katrina. So we'll miss Greg.
Right. So we will miss Greg. I have 2 memories to share of Greg. One is I had the privilege for the last couple of years to work with Greg on the hiring committee. And we would go to various on-campus interview events. And Greg, it was like going to the first day of school for Greg. I mean, he was really so enthusiastic. And the students with whom we met would really just clamor to his enthusiasm for Wood, Heron, and Evans. And he just, it really was a pleasure to see how enthusiastic, genuinely enthusiastic he was about our firm and about the practice of law, and specifically about the practice of intellectual property law. And the students, it really, he was able, just as others have said, was able to really connect with new incoming law school graduates and convey what he felt. And the other thing is that he would always say, sort of incredulously, when he would introduce himself to a new candidate, I've been with Wood, Heron, and Evans for 40, just, and he really was very proud. Every time he said it, he would just have a real a sense of pride, telling candidates, future lawyers, how proud he was of his work with Wood, Heron, and Evans, and of his tenure at Wood, Heron, and Evans. And really, what a privilege for me to see that in action. And then the other memory to share with you all is that Greg and Tom Humphrey and Sarah Graber and I traveled to Switzerland for a few occasions on these client development events. And the last one that I attended, where all four of us were there, well, it was when we were sitting after our that was Greg. Greg remembers it too. We had so you go through kind of back-to-back meetings, and you're kind of an intense, on meeting new people and talking up the firm and talking up our capabilities to be able to represent these European companies. And then we would have dinner at night and meet more people while we were sitting at the dinner table. And then when the whole 2.5 days was completed, we all just needed to take a breath and, sit down together and just decompress. And so I think Tom and Greg had rented an apartment room somewhere nearby. And so Greg was with us. Tom was, I think, packing up. You were probably going on to another meeting in Germany or something. So Sarah and Greg and I sat out on this lovely sunny veranda, and we made Greg promise that he would take you back to this beautiful spot because it was so, so pretty. But Greg just lapped it up. I mean, it was so obvious how joyful he felt to do exactly what he was so good at, meet people, convey his enthusiasm for Wood, Heron, and Evans and our capabilities. And it was really a fun thing. We shared a glass of wine, and it's a special memory. I will really sorely miss Greg because he just was such a huge, huge person for our firm and for all of us. What's next?
Try to be quick because I have a lot of overlap with what's been said, but I also, the Wired Jaw story I had is at a bar in DC, actually called the Irish Times, interestingly enough, where Greg didn't have it wasn't blended, it was already liquid. So we were pretty good about, but his adventure and his energy for adventure was phenomenal. But I will say this, so Greg was 5 years here when I started. So he was kind of like him, Tom Berger, Dave Lockman, who's not with us anymore, and a couple other younger attorneys were kind of like our big brothers. And Greg was a great big brother. And I will say this, Greg made me, I was hoping not to choke up too, but Greg made me, and I think many people here, want to be a better person, a better partner, a better lawyer, just a better person, because he was so kind and so helpful. And, you work with people for 30 plus years, and it's like a long marriage. There are going to be times of irritation, and we all get irritated with each other as partners and lawyers. And I don't think I ever once was irritated by Greg, where I just was angry or, didn't want him to talk. He was always a voice of calm. He was always a voice of kindness. And I just think his great legacy is everybody that met him, as Dave noted, he was magnetic and charismatic, and you wanted to be his friend, and he made you want to emulate his kindness and his personality. So he really touched me, and I will always remember him, and I always strive to be the better lawyer, the better partner, the better person that Greg was.
Most of you don't know me. I'm Kurt Grossman. I'm an old-time partner like Dave and Bruce, but I actually helped interview Greg when he first came here. And you know when you have a winner right there. Fred and Carolyn, you raised a winner without question. The grilled cheese sandwich case was my client. The cheese, even though it melted, held everything together. That was the key. But I just wanted to add one little comment here. I know Greg was a man of faith, as am I. In my faith, what's most important is what we're doing right here. So he's breaking bread with people and talking about the people you've lost and remembering them, which forces you to have a smile. Today, as Clem started, we'll put a smile on our heart, even if not on our face. But I will miss Greg dearly. He's passed at the same age my sister passed, which makes it like another little brother has gone away. But he'll always be here with us. But he was a spectacular man. Thank you.
One of the aspects of when we talk about doing a memorial is the root word for memorial is memory. And that's exactly where we're going today with some of the stories that we have, some of the recollections that we have. And I will draw just a quick page from our buddies at the Wolfhounds. Greg was a good, but not great rugby player. Okay. The same can be said for his playing of softball with the Lawyers League that we did down on Eastern Avenue. Greg, God love him. He was always the fastest guy on the team. You let Greg loose, I mean, he's just there. Boom, there. He's going to get a single more than anybody else on the team. But we had him out in the outfield. And the problem with that is, you know, if you've done enough playing of baseball or watching, the whole concept of catching a fly ball in the outfield is a matter of physics. You need to time balls hit up in the air. How high is it? How deep is it going? Time your running forward to match up where the ball will hit the ground or above the ground, and you've made an out. Greg never was short. The ball never hit the ground in front of Greg. Greg always ran past the ball. Now, he didn't, I will say, in all fairness, he ran past it a few times. For the most part, he was really good at it. But darn it, he just turned his jets on, and you just couldn't stop him. And it's like, Greg, oh, darn. And it's back there behind him. He's got to go and play it up. But it never had any effect on him. The greatest part of that is that, and those of us who played in that league will remember that Mount Lookout Tavern was the place we headed to after the game was over. And, we, have a ginger ale and then we'd all go home. Not. So anyway, so the point is that we'd be over there and it was just like, okay, that's just where we were. In those days, we probably lost more than we won, but it never had any effect on anybody. The coolest part about how Greg operated was it didn't bother him. And it really, by association, it never bothered us. It's like, yeah, okay, we lost the game. So what? Let's have a beer. Let's enjoy it. There was a fundamental joy in being together that just characterized what Greg did. I mean, we've said it in several different ways and in several different operations, but the truth be told, that's exactly how it was. And if you got to go through life, darn it, go through life like that. Go through with a smile on your face, be open, do what you can for your fellow man and your fellow woman, and say, okay, I gave it my best shot and it didn't work, or it did. Either way, you move on, you thank God you made it through another day, and you do it again. So, I mean, it was just one other example of how things work with Greg. I mean, I can't, I said it before, but I mean, I really, you may not appreciate this, okay? But it was very rare for Greg Ahrens to not have been on some committee at this office. I can't come up with any time, even when he wasn't on the EC, it was going to be, I don't know, the real estate committee or the something with the staff or something going to some type of forward progression game plan of what the firm is going to be doing, the 20-year plan down the road. Whatever it was, there was always some committee that Greg was in on. He was in on them. He was putting in his opinion. He was meeting litigation committees. I mean, they just go, the list goes on and on. So it's someone who decided that I'm going to be engaged, and he actually did it. Do we have anybody else? Oh, and you actually know how to put that thing up.
Hopefully take this out of my ear so I don't listen to myself. It's a delight to be here with everyone who knows Greg and loved him. Not going to make it either. Okay, that's out of the way. I met Greg in 1993. I came to Cincinnati to see if I could find a job so I could accompany my wife while she was transferred by Procter & Gamble. And in their infinite wisdom, Mr. Dave Stollard, Mr. Bruce Tittle brought their wives, Greg, to go to dinner with us over there at the place that's called Orchids now, although I guess it's had some other name back then. I was, of course, like everyone else, instantly charmed by him. And here's what I want to say. I've actually written it down, sorry. The day like today, I think we come maybe with the idea that we're mourning a loss, but I want to channel Greg's spirit, and I want to flip that, and I want to celebrate the win of having known him. We've all been blessed to have been a part of Greg's extraordinarily well-lived life. I mean, you can look it up. He was a giant in our world. He was nationally recognized patent litigator, 4 years of fierce and brilliant advocacy on part of client after client. He was a partner in every sense of the word. He was a practice group leader. He was, I think has been said, the longest tenured member of our executive committee. And in the words of so many who recognized him, one of the very best in his field. But that doesn't really tell the story that we all have, that we want to capture here. Greg was for 33 years my coworker. He was my confidant. And my very dear friend. But really most important at all, you know, we chose practice in a very high stakes arena. And I would have to say Greg more than me. Fortunes, investments, innovations, futures hang in the balance every time he walks in the courtroom. And, you know, Greg had that gift we're all talking about. He made everyone feel welcome and special. And there's one more aspect. He made everyone know it was going to be okay. He was calm in the storm. Clients would walk into the room and they would be rattled with the uncertainty of what they were dealing with. And Greg's steady voice and thoughtful explanation and unshakable confidence would settle the air for them. He didn't just argue cases. He gave people hope. He helped people see the path forward when it was hidden, and the partners all leaned on him, and we trusted him implicitly. And to tell you what, his adversaries respected him deeply because he thought hard, he fought hard every time, and he did it with integrity, and he did it with grace. So this man who spends all of his life taking on complex litigation, you would think would, make heavy use of the Barker launcher, but that is not Greg. He would spend his spare time in these adventures that we'd only just hear little stories from, because frankly, he just loved his life at full throttle. The rugby days are legendary, the bumps and bruises and the wired jaw. There's also the mountain climbing, photo after photo. The serving in Haiti, the dropping everything and going to New Orleans because there were people hurting there. Basically, any place there was a tough case and a challenge, he would dive in. He didn't wait for permission to live fully. He didn't ask whether this was okay. He jumped in. He took on, and he pulled the rest of us with a grin. At the heart of it all was his family, who I'm so delighted are here. He delighted in his children. Anytime he talked about them, about Alex or Celia, this just lit up the room with his pride. His office is a gallery of memories and love, his family. And to Monica, his partner and his anchor, I can tell you she brought out the very best for him. His love for them was quiet, steady, and profound, and a foundation that sustained him in every tough season that he had. You know, what drew us to Greg was not just skill and courage, it was his nature and his warmth and his pursuit of God and his kingdom. You know, when I came to Wood, Heron, and Evans, I had no Christian or any other spiritual connection. I found that here in the late 1990s. Then sometime later, I discovered I had a brother with Greg in that. He lived his faith without loud proclamations, but in a way that he treated people with kindness and patience and calm and unshakable belief in redemption and hope. That conviction attracted everyone. Colleagues became friends and clients became family. Strangers became welcome guests. One of the most moving conversations I've had about Greg is with Alan and Lambert Vaux, who he had fought alongside with for 10 years. And one litigation after another with their multi-billion-dollar massive opponent, who Greg slowly and systematically beat into the ground and out of the industry. And there's a story Greg likes to tell about one of those trials, really one of the earlier ones, when I came to San Diego to testify, probably to beat back some crazy allegation that I was a fraudulent, terrible person. And in the hallway outside the courthouse in San Diego, having burned the midnight oil, flown all the way to California, everything else, I was asked to wait until it was my turn, and I decided that this was not a bad time to just take a little cat nap. And, I got 20 minutes in, and it was great. I was nicely refreshed. But when Greg came out, he discovers me sound asleep. And he woke me up, and I will never forget him giving me a pinch on my cheeks to try to make me look a little more awake before we walked in the courtroom. Now, he tells this story as if it's about me. But it's not about me. It's about him. It's about the fact that I was at such peace that things are going to go correctly in that courtroom, that Greg had it so under control that I could just take a nap and not even worry about it and get a little beauty rest before I waited to get in there. That's why that happened. I can't imagine feeling like I did with anyone else, like I did with Greg, being my partner in battle. And for those 10 years, I'm so grateful that he was there with me. We'll obviously miss Greg dearly. We'll miss his laugh. We'll miss his counsel. We'll miss the way he would clap you on the shoulder and say, "We've got this." We'll carry him along in the memories that I'm describing. And so today, what I want to do is to say thank you to Greg. Thank you for 33 years of friendship. Thank you for showing us how to live with courage and compassion, and for reminding me that even now, everything will be okay, because you have shown us the one who makes it so. Rest well, my friend, till we meet again.
I could do a song and dance or something, but
Please, let me.
it would fall short, trust me.
Son, I don't want to hold back. Oh, shucks. Okay. We were asked to say a few words about Greg. The first thing I can tell you is it's going to take more than a few words to talk about Greg. Greg and I worked together for about 34 years. Although he was my boss, he always treated me as his equal and with respect. We started going to trials together in 1999 through, I think that's supposed to be 1991, through 2024. See, I still can't type. Going to trial with Greg was one of the best aspects of my job. It was hard work, but very interesting, challenging, and showed me another side of Greg in a different setting than every day at the firm did not. Greg very, very infrequently lost his temper, but the few times that he did, he was immediately apologetic for it. I know in my heart I would not have been able to keep my job with WH&E if Greg had not been my boss. We went through a lot, both in business and personally: marriages, divorces, children, loss, and all of the many ups and downs of life. I'm glad we had each other in those times. He was more than just my boss. He was my friend. Greg was a wonderful, kind, selfless, giving, and amazing man. I'm glad I'm retired because I could not face coming into this office every day and not seeing him sitting behind his desk. He was always there when I arrived for work and when I left. WH&E will not be the same without Greg working here. As I mentioned before, it was always fun to go into Greg's office when he wasn't in there and knock the piles of paper just slightly off center. He always immediately knew I'd been in there and done it. I send my deepest condolences to Monica, Alec, Celia, Greg's mom and dad, and the rest of his family. Again, he was a wonderful man to work for and have as a friend, and will be greatly missed. And my final thought is I want to ask the firm to get a plaque and name the war room on this floor the Ahrens workroom in his memory. Oh, yeah, I don't want to keep that.
Anyone else? Okay, I'd like to point out, only because I was looking at certain cancer-related issues, not personally, but within our larger family when Greg was going through his. And probably for about the last 6 to 8 months with Greg, I would make almost daily trips up to his office. Just check. How are things doing? How is this study going? What's your PSA? Where are things moving? And I know that Greg was not necessarily too inclined to be just, sending it out on a firm-wide internet or something. But we had some very good and very completely unguarded conversations. And my fundamental sense from all that was, here's a person who's been handed a really tough hand of cards. He's really been handed to him, and yet there was never 1 minute of complaining about it. There was never one moment of, those other SOBs are out there and they're coming through with their studies and they're all cancer free and I'm not. He just didn't do that. And I know I keep coming back to this, but the fact of the matter is there was an acceptance of where he was in the world. And it was with his family, with the firm, with his colleagues, with his friends. He just had that sense. Here is where I am, and I'm okay with that. There's just recently, the Oscars were just this last weekend. And one of the CBS writers, a guy named Steve Hartman, he, after a number of years, apparently, he and his group received an Oscar. And he's the guy who would do, I guess we'll call him the feel good kind of vignettes. And somewhere it was either the CBS or Steve Hartman himself saying, what he does is take the numb out. He takes the numb out. He tries to get those layers of insulation away from your body, from your fibers, from your mind, and just open up your heart to the good things that can be out there. And I don't know who made this quote. No doubt many people have done it over the years. But one of the points being made is you want to walk out of this world in a better place than when you came in. Craig did it. There's nobody in this room who can say not. He's left the world in a better place because he was in it. That being said, before I start cracking up,
One other thing.
yes,
He would be right here telling every man in this building, get your prostate checked. My fiance has prostate cancer, and any time I ever talked to him about it, he said, I'll call him, let me call him, I'll call him and talk to him. He was adamant about keeping after your health. So do that.
Terry's got a side job with the AMA, by the way. But anyway, everyone, I thank you for being here on behalf of the firm, and I want to thank all of the partners of the firm for supporting this effort to bring everybody together. Thank you, everyone. And I want to thank everyone who came in from the outside. So Chip, Bruce, Dave, Kurt, and if I missed anyone, my apology. And certainly the staff, thank you for coming here and listening, because that's really all we can do right now. But hopefully it opens our hearts up to there are good things in the world. There really are. And we can help make that even better. So thank you all. And if no one else has any other comments, oh, Pat's got something.
Okay, let's see. Mr. Ahrens, he has always had a generous spirit, and he would always acknowledge me from all exits as if he was coming this direction, went into the mail room that way, or in the kitchen. He'd always stop to say hello. And he loved the skywalk. And he'd make sure that it was always safe and everyone could go out and enjoy it. And when we moved here, I asked him if I could have more hours, and he said, let me see what I can do. And it was done. And so, but anyway, he's already missed. And so this is what we say. We live on to live again.
Okay, if no one has any other comments, oh, sorry.
But I just want to thank everybody for coming here, because although he would not want everybody to be talking about him, he didn't want to be the center of attention. He didn't, he was humble enough that way that I don't know, he'd be like, okay, that's enough. But he loved this place so much. And I got to tell you what it did for him too, because so he had a lot of bone pain because the prostate cancer had gone to his bones. And he took a lot of oxy, and we had to keep track, extended release, immediate release, all that. And we had a folder, a notebook, and we kept track. And then I started tracking how long between, let's see how long it is. Well, when he would make it here, and it was just the last couple of months that he was working from home more often, but he would go, instead of every 3 hours, he would go 6 or 7 hours when he was here. He just didn't, he was focused. He loved it. It gave him purpose. And so he didn't have the pain as much here. And I do have to say, because sometimes he would come home, I don't know, in the last 6 months, with all the drugs and the hormone therapy, and he went into female menopause, and, just all that stuff. And he did lose his temper more often in the last year and get grumpy, and, told me at partner meetings he went off, and he felt so bad about it. But, with me, and I said, I don't take it personally. You're going through hell. So it's just not, I don't know, it's to be expected. But he still kept trying and trying and trying. And I don't think, had he not had that brain bleed, and then, I don't know, the perfect storm of the brain bleed and the cancer and just all that stuff, I think it would have been so hard for him just to wrap things up here. I think it would have hurt him to voluntarily pack up his office and walk out. I think that would have killed him. So, because this was part of his identity, and he just, I don't know, it was family. So, I don't know, he loved it. In October and November, when he was in a clinical trial, and the first 4 weeks were 4 days in the hospital each week. And he had the most horrific side effects I've ever seen, that they had ever seen. He was patient 101 in the world, and the only one in Cincinnati on this clinical trial. We tried everything. And one morning he's got his computer open, and it was a VLP, but it was a pro bono case, and he's doing a court hearing from his hospital bed. And he's just like, he's like, I'm not on camera because I'm in the hospital. And, and luckily he showed up because they won. So it just, he just, it's the loyalty to you guys, to his clients, to, I don't have any, I can't find the words to describe, what it meant. So for whatever reason, things happened the way they happened, and we thought we had a little bit more time. I think for him, it worked out better. So there's a reason. So thank you for what you've said about him and what you've done for him.
Okay, everyone, thank you all for coming. we're going to say the official end of the gathering, the memorial is ended. But we still have food, we still have drinks. And I am not suggesting that we go crazy here, but it is St. Patrick's Day. So, you know, sorry to point that out, but yes, it is St. Patrick's Day. So, thank you all. And if you're all done with the day, you all can head home if you like. If you got things to wrap them up and head on out. Thanks again.